Disney and Marvel Studios' big new blockbusting tentpole has officially opened in theaters, and not only do we have this weekend's box office numbers, but we also have our review and some stories from the film's chaotic production. Let's talk about Captain America: Brave New World here on That Park Place.
Captain America 4 was not very good and didn't seem to perform that well at the box office, despite being over $100 million on opening weekend, plus an extra day they made up.
This box office a little bit light from what we're seeing now. A lot of people are going to go, "Hey, wait a minute, though! It's nearly $200 million. That's huge. That's massive." And the budget was only $185. Don't you know? This is some great news for Captain America: Brave New World. Not necessarily, folks. We'll get into it. That was up until about 3 in the morning last night because I was watching Captain America at a theater. Interestingly enough, and guess what, Jonas? It was absolutely packed. Oh wait, no, it wasn't. It was.
Where's your tweet? I saw the theater. And by the way, that's a really nice theater.
Yes, yeah, it's a Dolby Vision PLF, so it is one of the best you can get, at least in Arizona, and it was not so good here. Let me go ahead and share you my tweet about how many people were packed in there like sardines trying to see this thing.
Yeah, that looks like the theater I was in, kind of a little bit. Yeah,
that's a really nice theater. Look at that.
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah. But I have to say, did you have anybody join after you got this amazing shot?
Yes, there were a couple of people that joined because AMC runs like 30 minutes of previews. So some people did join, but it was only a very small handful. And again, This is the big, tentpole movie that's coming out right now with absolutely no competition. Not a lot of demand for it.
Hey man, they were definitely going to be raking it in. Now you were at a later show, so maybe that speaks a little bit to that. But look, I was there at a preview show on Thursday. And you know what, Vash? There are 5 total people, including me, in the movie for that. So when you start to look at that, you realize and recognize that, of course, regions, areas, different theaters are going to have a different audience and demographic that go and consume this product, and maybe there's different times of day that happens. But when it comes to the overall look and feel for this particular film, this is kind of like mostly half the day, if not more than that, for these theaters, at least in the regions that we're in. So I don't know where this money came from, to be fair, outside of the fact that inflation and ticket prices have been elevated. But I don't know, Jonas, I'm just going to say this. I don't think this film's going to have a bounce back weekend.
No, I don't think so either, unless they just go ahead and put the marketing budget into directly buying tickets at the cheapest theaters possible.
But our good friend our good friend Staccato had already mentioned that possibly that was already happening. I
think it's very possible, and I'll throw this data point out here. It's anecdotal, and when it's one data point, it's just anecdotal. I went to go see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 in theaters on Saturday. And there were more people in that screening than there are here by a factor of how many people were in your theater, Vash?
Probably a dozen.
Yeah, double in this screening of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is free for Paramount Plus subscribers at this point, by the way. So I think people that go to theaters at this point are not as worried about whether or not it's an exclusive to theaters. They're worried about whether or not it's a good experience in a theater. And I don't think they're getting that from Captain America. Yep. Olaf here has it well. They used 5 days to score one weekend. Yes. For those of you who are not aware, here's the headline, first of all. Captain America: Brave New World box office spun by Access Media as victory, but actual numbers tell the real story. So that weekend that they're talking about, and call me crazy, but I only consider 2.5 days to be the weekend. Friday, when you're done with work, Saturday and Sunday. They got an extra one here for President's Day, and also they're counting Thursday here. So this is more like 5 days that they're trying to spin as 3 days here, in which they made $100 million across 5 days. All right. Captain America Brave New World opened over the holiday weekend to a domestic box office total of 100 million, with 88 million coming from its first 3-day weekend and an additional 12 million from extended double holiday. I'm also going to point out when they say first 3-day weekend, they count the Thursday previews as part of Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And so it's really 4 days here.
Well, and
Internationally, go ahead.
no, not only do they do that when they add those together, they report the Friday as the bigger number, but without really telling the reader what's actually going on. So anybody who's not informed about that are getting the wrong idea about what Friday looked like.
Internationally, the film grossed 92.4 million, bringing its worldwide total to 192.4 million. Look at this right here. There's Anthony Mackie in, I think he actually has like 4 or 5 Captain America costumes in this film, and he changes through them so frequently. And it's not a cool change like Batman being like, "Oh, well, today I'm using the water ski armor or the ice skating armor." Well, that sounds really really lame when I say it, but Joel Schumacher actually did a pretty good job with production design on Batman and Robin and Batman Forever.
Yeah, that's true.
If I won't be pilloried in the chat for speaking positively about those films.
I mean, the only time that they had a real misstep was with bat nipples, but that's a whole other conversation. So.
Well, yeah, I didn't notice them when I was a kid, and but yeah, they should be mocked just a little bit about those. But he was going for a Roman armor type of thing. All right. So when stacking up Brave New World's 88 million 3-day opening against a list of MCU failures, the results are mixed at best. The Marvels with a $46 million opening weekend, Eternals with 71 million, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania 106 million opening weekend. So Ant-Man beat this. And I think most people acknowledge at this point that Ant-Man, the opening weekend of Ant-Man, they said this was a success, and now everyone accepts that film did not do well at the box office. So I'm going to call it now. Eventually, the media will catch up and admit that Captain America Brave New World was not a great opening weekend. Thor the Dark World, early in the MCU, Phase 2, and Iron Man 2 with a $128 million opening weekend. Iron Man 2. Man, I didn't know that they made that much money on Iron Man 2 right at the start. Near the start. I mean, it is the second one. Good stuff. Brave New World sits between Eternals and Quantumania, both of which were considered major disappointments for Marvel Studios. Yes, it performed nearly twice as well as the Marvels, which flopped with only 206 million worldwide. But is that really the benchmark for success now? It also barely scraped by Thor the Dark World and lost to Iron Man 2, both of which came out when movie tickets were much cheaper. We'll talk more about inflation in a moment. In 2011, the first Avenger debuted. The average movie ticket cost $7.93. In 2025, the average ticket price is $10.78. In the time between 2011 and 25, inflation has gone up roughly 41%. So adjusted for inflation, the first Avengers 65 million opening would equate to 93.5 million today, surpassing Brave New World's 88 million. I'm going to say it. First Avenger, actually a great film. I love First Avenger. It is, and I don't understand why they don't call Joe Johnston for more films in the MCU. I love watching Joe Johnston films, with maybe one exception, that being Nutcracker in the Four Realms. He's a director of Rocketeer, for those of you who are not aware of it. He also worked on Return of the Jedi. So as often as I can say, I really like Joe Johnston, I'm going to say it. Guys, why do you think this film only made 100 million at the box office, giving them their giving them the made up number?
Well, I think some of that they've earned a little bit of goodwill. I think back with Deadpool Wolverine, so I think that's a little bit to do with it. Also, too, as far as the rebranded, I don't know, reimagined original cast for the Avengers, I think Anthony Mackie is looked at fairly fondly by the wider general audience. Now, for us, I mean, he's definitely burned some bridges there for sure. But I think, overall, it's like, okay, well, let's go ahead and see him raise the shield here. But it's very strange. I think once the initial kind of word of mouth comes from this film, I think people are gonna realize just how bad this is, and maybe they already have with this B- cinema score. That's really the kiss of death right here. Remember, it's $30 million less globally at the box office in its terms of its performance than Ant-Man Quantumania, which, as Jonas beautifully pointed out, as people have come to reflect on the film there and how well or not well that box office was, people are rightfully saying, yeah, that wasn't a good showing for Marvel. And you remember here, now when Ant-Man Quantumania actually opened, it opened in what, February of 2023, right? Well, right after that, Bob Iger makes an appearance at the Morgan Stanley Conference, Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference. And he says this. He was actually asked about the strength of the brand following Quantumania. He said, Marvel, there are 7,000 characters. There are a lot more stories to tell. And I think it is not necessarily the volume of Marvel storytelling, but how many times we go back to the well on certain characters. Do we need sequels? Typically, they work well for us, but do you need a third and fourth, for instance? Or is it time to turn to other characters? So there's nothing in any way inherently off in terms of the Marvel brand. I think we just have to look at what characters and stories that we're mining. Is a direct quote right there. They rethought the entire MCU following the performance of Ant-Man Quantumania. As you can see right here. I mean, they really went back to the well and rethought how they were going to shape the MCU going forward. Again, this film debuted $30 million less than Quantumania. That's how bad we're talking about right here. And the film is absolutely bizarre because it's actually built on the foundations of films that nobody saw, like The Eternals or Falcon Winter Soldier and the Hulk Abomination film.
Yeah. So this movie, and you guys gave me your opinions on this, if you like. This movie, first of all, you have a Captain America who is not Captain America. He's actually Falcon. So he does have, at least to start with, the powers of Falcon. And I've said this and I've gotten a little bit of pushback on it, but watching him fight, it's almost like he has the agility of Spider-Man. There's some ridiculous moves that he is able to do as a human that make no sense to me. He's not doing weird flips when he's not in superhero mode. Like when he's actually fighting, for some reason, he's able to do these amazing flips and amazing kicks that feel like he is just shy of shooting out webs and knocking people out with his, taking people down with his web shooters. He also has Ant-Man's helmet. He has, of course, Captain America's shield. He has Black Panther's suit. We'll talk about that in a moment.
We'll talk about that in a moment.
He what else did he have? Oh, he has Captain America's sidekick, because he now has a Falcon to follow him around, even though he still is in the Falcon armor.
Well, what's weird? Okay, Jonas. The very first time you see Captain America, he's in the he's in the air, right? He's doing the Falcon thing, and he sets down. Like he lands, and he's going so fast. There's a sonic boom that actually follows in his wake. And when he makes landing, like he's fine. Like you would have liquefied your body immediately upon impact of him setting down right there in the way that it was depicted in the film. And yet, like, he's totally fine. Again, we're not really quite sure what his abilities or powers are. It's not really set up well, like you said, Jonas. And he doesn't have any super serum. They make that point multiple times. So I look at something like that and I'm going, how did he survive that? Or how did he do this? Or like, why doesn't this movie make at all cogent sense whatsoever?
Right. And when he lands, it's not like he's charged up the suit. When I originally saw that, because I think they put it in the previews, and they put almost everything in those previews. Oh, by the way, he has Archangel's fletchlets that come off of the wings as well, which makes sense when Archangel has like organic biometal wings, but doesn't make sense when you have a guy who probably needs every piece of those wings in order to fly.
That's a good point.
There's a deep cut for anybody who doesn't know who Archangel is. But you may find out 2 or 3 X-Men movies in, or in the first one, if they just decide to make Apocalypse the big villain of the next version of the MCU here. But then you have Ruth Bat Seraph right here,
yes,
who is playing Sabra. Okay, so one thing I'm going to say, and this is not a dig at her. She had some kind of childhood disease, apparently, that stopped her from growing, which is why she is the height that she is. So I'm not knocking her for her personal height, but she is a very small person, and she is taking down 250 pound stuntmen in this film. She's supposed to have superpowers. She does not have superpowers because in the comics she's a mutant, and in this she's just a Black Widow. I still don't quite understand why they wrote her in as someone who trained in the Red Room or whatever. But there are so many things in this movie that I'm like, okay, so you almost have a Captain America film here, but there's also pieces of everything else. Oh, by the way, it's also serving as a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which is basically not an MCU film at this point. I consider Spider-Man 2 to be more canon to the MCU than Incredible Hulk. Forgive me on that one.
Well, I actually didn't believe that the new MCU started until Iron Man. So whatever anybody else says, I think that's when we got from that point forward, we had the MCU.
Well, do you mean because Iron Man was like 2 weeks before Incredible Hulk in theaters, and then there was a very long gap, the longest gap the MCU has ever had between Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2, which reintroduced the idea here. I'm crazy. I'm a huge MCU fan, or at least I used to be, and I've never seen the half-life on a series go so quickly in the other direction here. So let's see. She isn't 5'2". That's a lie. Okay, maybe not. She looks like she's 5'2" to me. Go look her up. Go look her up.
Anthony Mackie's 5'10". So for comparison, I mean,
so Anthony,
is she wearing heels in that image?
She might be. She might be. And I'm not really wanting to like body shame this person or anything like that here. She's not a very tall person.
Well, and the reason why we're making a point about her size is because, like Jonas has said on Twitter and other places, she is throwing around 200-pound men and doing it in a way that, well, I don't know, Wanda Maximoff would have done if she were in this role right here. So it's kind of unusual to have cast somebody so small, particularly given the choreography and the fight scenes that they're depicting. Now, it's interesting, Jonas, because there was a Vulture article. We can't go over it in depth here. We just simply don't have time. But you'll note that this Vulture article actually had somebody from the production come out and give some comments about his description of working on the film and what was actually going on behind the scenes. And one of the things that this person actually said was one of the issues that kept popping up was the fight scenes were not believable. And whether it comes to somebody like Sabra or Captain America or the Red Hulk, for instance, you can see right here some of the action scenes literally were not believable, and we had a lot of frustrations on set. It just takes you out of the film, and you can't suspend your disbelief when you see so many incredible things that, remember, the MCU is supposed to be somewhat grounded in reality, and yet you really can't suspend that disbelief to believe what you're seeing on screen.
Right, and the thing, if you have somebody who is of shorter stature, like a fight between a hobbit and a dwarf or a hobbit and a human, it's a more interesting fight if you actually acknowledge the height difference there, the size difference. When looking at this film, it is a hodgepodge of so many things that have been smushed together. You can see areas where there might have been a reshoot. It seems like people are reestablishing things that were established in the previous scene. There's so many things that just don't quite fit. There's a shot suddenly of someone by themselves taking a pill or something like that, where you wonder, when was this added? Or the fact that the merchandising for the leader doesn't quite match the packaging and the final design on that character. And apparently that was the redo. That was the second version that ended up in the film. Somebody with his brain coming out of his head and also giving a shocking amount of exposition in scenes. This film is a mess, but I will say the effects on Harrison Ford as the Red Hulk, I actually thought were really good. That is the one thing where every now and then there'd be a shot where it's like, okay, you're going a different direction with this. You might have had somebody else working on this particular shot, but there's some really great moments in there with the Red Hulk.
In that may be true, because there were so many different effects houses that were involved in this, from Weta to
Right.
ILM to everything else. Definitely a lot of people were working on a lot of different things, and what actually got displayed in the film could definitely be, all over the place, a smorgasbord. But I didn't necessarily find a lot of the Red Hulk effects useful because they didn't stick with what Red Hulk would have been. Some of the people in my audience brought it up, and it reminded me that Red Hulk is radioactive.
Yes.
So the fact
And
that,
he
go ahead.
burns things when he walks.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, they got that right. Remember when he was changing, he put his hands on the carpet, melted right through that. He melted through his suit that he was wearing, the whole 9 yards. I mean, you had, fire. Okay. But that guy's a walking nuclear radiation problem. And Falcon was shrugging that off, I guess. His face should have melted. We should have had this amazing effect of, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and, like,
on Anthony Mackie.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, maybe I won't. Maybe I'm not going to hang out around this guy, because he's a little bit, of a problem there.
Right. And I can't tell you how much it bothered me that he obviously has a Wakandan suit that has vibranium absorption and deflection powers. And I would love to know I would love to see the answer to the question of what happens if a Hulk punches a Black Panther suit. What happens when that force is redirected back at an enemy? And I don't think we got the answer to that.
No.
It was, and apparently he can be taken out by repeated stabbings, which is also pretty dark. I don't know. This film, I'll pick it up on Blu-ray because I pick up almost everything on Blu-ray once I find it on the clearance rack. Maybe once it hits $10, I'll pick this one up. But I'm not thinking this film has legs here, and I'm actually hopeful that the MCU will get away from something like this. Do you think they're going to stick Harrison Ford's Red Hulk, Thunderbolt Ross, into the Thunderbolts?
I don't know about this. Well, it would make sense for him to make an appearance, but Culture, I think you may have heard the report that Harrison Ford was signed on for more Marvel projects going forward. I actually think he did a pretty decent job considering the material and his age. I actually thought he didn't phone it in quite as much as he's been alleged to have done in recent films so far, but maybe you have a different opinion.
He's got limited range of motion. One of the reasons, and why they put him in a motion capture suit, was stupid. All he had to get was the facial stuff. I'm not even going to get into that. That's just a terrible idea. But he's not going to be very useful in Thunderbolts. In fact, why they're making Thunderbolts is beyond me. I mean, like, hey, let's have our own squad. Our self-removal squad team movie. It's a bad idea, especially with the people that are in their version of Thunderbolts. It's not really Thunderbolts. I feel multiplicity.
Their squad film was specifically meant to be a copy of what James Gunn did with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Right.
And then so much that they hired him for the sequel that was not really a sequel. So bizarre. And now Thunderbolts is yet another team of quote unquote losers that have to be put on the same team together and function dysfunctionally. And they're trying to hide the fact that obviously Taskmaster dies pretty quick. Actually, I kind of feel like that's the movie we watched here, Captain America 4, Taskmaster, because he does so many things that other heroes do. But we got some super chats here. Going Shogi for $4.99. There was only a couple of reshoots, nothing out of the normal, out of the ordinary, totally normal. Can I have my family back now?
Yes. Yeah. Listen, folks, when you have a big reshoot process like this one is alleged to have had, remember, to bring everybody back, that's a huge cost in and of itself, but that leaves less time for visual effects, right? Visual effects don't quite know what to work on. Maybe that's why some of the visual effects don't look so good here, even though it had a monstrous budget. It just leads to so many successive problems, and it's very apparent in the film that this was tampered with.
I totally agree. Let's see here. A tipping barn for a member for 6 was some of Captain's numbers due to the weather. I'm surprised they didn't pull that one out again. When certain parts of the country have bad weather, yes, they do pull that out. But they have to say that they have to have the headline be, "Oh, we did really well," and they don't want anything to cloud the idea that it did really well. They can't even say, "But it would have been better if it wasn't freezing cold in parts of the country." Hey, Troy Pacelli back with $5.
Wow.
What could be a better exemplar of DEI than a hero only super because he is propped up by all the other superheroes' tech? I think Anthony Mackie got robbed, by the way. There's nothing wrong with him as a performer here. His skills on the red carpet and in interviews, I think he could rightly blame his publicists for some of that because they sent him down the wrong path. He's a guy who stumbles on the red carpet frequently. Actually, one of my favorite comments that he ever made was, you don't need Seabiscuit to be directed by a horse, so why do you need a black guy to direct Black Panther? Or maybe reverse that. So Anthony Mackie will shoot his mouth off on any number of subjects, and I felt like they sent him the entirely wrong direction on here. But yeah, I think he got handed a raw deal by this movie, and there's nothing that he deserved about this mishmash of just it's a hot dog is what it is. It's all the leftover parts of the animal mixed together and produced into this thing that hopefully you will eat and not think too much about it. Thank you, Troy. Aldo's Journal for $1.99. Isn't Ford Indian? He played Indian Jones or something.
There you go. There you go.
You know, it's funny. I was in France one time, and I came across a place called the Cafe Indiana, and it was all Native American decorations, and they played South Park on all the televisions. It was a very interesting image of America that they have over there in France. Kanan Barnes for $5. It's already in high quality to watch on the high seas. It's not going to have long legs. I didn't realize it was already that bad or that good on social medias. Sorry, the anti-social medias, if we want to call it that. I'm not going to get specific for the sake of YouTube here. Olaf for €2. Captain America Boar. Seen enough reviews. Get it? Because Boar rhymes with 4. This movie is an absolute mess.
I mean, look, everybody here that's seen it probably had the same opinion. I mean, there are 3 spots that will give you a quality nap time if you're a little fatigued. You may not have chosen to have a nap, but it might be forced upon you. And look, there was a lot of nonsensical casting and choices made in the film. And then you have to consider that it was reshot, 4 times. So when you start to factor that all into the equation, you're like, this is what the result of making a film 5 times over is going to be. Thanks, Disney. You can't trust them. No, you can't trust Disney's judgment.
No, not at all. Not at all. And I'll say that Julius Ona, though, the director of the film, said there was just a little bit of reshoots there, just additional photography, just one time, and it was normal. Okay, Julius. Okay.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.